My experience occurred between February 19 and 24, 2010, and I believe it is a subject for researchers. Everything I experienced on the night of February 24th is almost impossible to describe in words. I returned from the experience with a multitude of memories and knowledge, and that is why I find it hard to describe it in detail. I will try to describe my extraordinary experience as follows. I was in hospital undergoing surgery on my myocardium for the application of 4 bypasses. I know that what I experienced holds so much complex meaning. We existed before creation, and by that I mean before the universe and life as we know it. Each time I closed my eyes during the 6 days after my surgery, I had these extraordinary experiences, which I can only call extraordinary with capital E. I believe I experienced what happens between God our Father and all of life. All of life is generated, not created, by Him, in His image and likeness, with full freedom of will and being. There are no limitations or distinctions between any living things in any way, because everything is an expression and expansive extension of God our Father Himself. These extraordinary experiences started when I suddenly fell into a big sense of peace. I felt very alive and with great awareness, similar to a deep meditation. I was surrounded, like being hugged by a huge, indescribable love that made me feel like I was in total happiness. It felt like a fatherly love, and I was so safe and filled with joy at its extraordinary presence, the likes of which I had never experienced before. I was traveling, flying above all creation, and I was speaking with God our Father as if we had been keeping the conversation going forever. He was leading me and addressing me in a deep, warm voice, and I was feeling His immense fatherly love. He asked me lovingly to make a choice. Son, look, choose where you want to go. This question was about my next life experience, and He was referring to everything that was below us. I had a strong feeling that there was a lot more to see before I could make a choice, but I immediately answered, "No, Father, I do not want to go. I want to go back. I want to go back because of Felicia. She would suffer so much if I did not return. She does not deserve so much suffering. When I get back, I want to create the union of all religions of the Lord God our Father, so it could stop the nonsense and divisions forever. This has been the real cause of all of the ills in whole of humanity. What do you say, Father? I do not think it can be that difficult to unmask the non-truths, omissions, harmful and false interpretations of various teachings that have made mankind feel fearful and dominated. I can do it." At this point, God our Father said to me, "Do you know what beloved means? Beloved is the person who asks and dedicates his or her life to help people in their awakening, to help them remember and know they are all generated from them." Suddenly I found myself in a completely different place, in front of a great multitude of deceased people who were yelling at me and accusing me of many things. The great trial starts in the heavenly court. I knew, however, that there is no such thing as the great trial, because God our Father never judges us. He set us free, gave us our free will and all of Himself, always and to every one, with no divisions. Any divisions we experience in life are man-made. I experienced another moment of great presence, expansion of consciousness and deep peace, and felt embraced by the immense paternal love, similar to that already described, as follows. Suddenly, I found myself in absolute darkness with no external reference points, and that was very frightening for me, because I always knew that during the other experiences I was not alone. In this dark place, however, I was without any inner hold. This made me feel a deep sense of hopelessness and absolute loneliness. It was as if there was nothing, and nothing had ever existed. What I felt was akin to a weak and precarious candle flame that would go out at any moment. After a while of feeling that way, I began to recall a distant memory. There was someone or something that had always helped me, but I could not quite grasp what it was. After a long time in this terrible state, I began to feel like a microscopic organism and experienced some very slight movements. I saw nothing because I was still in absolute darkness. The suffering was dreadful, and I cannot associate it with anything that I have ever experienced at any time in my life. I became desperate to remember that single thing I was aware could save me from this immeasurable pain. Slowly I felt that I had a larger body and was living underground in the earth from which I was able to nourish myself. More time passed and I began to feel like I wanted to move in the ground, like a little worm. I felt the fear of being eaten at every millimeter of movement in the ground. Then I began to feel bigger, a worm that moved a bit more freely in small tunnels, but always with the fear of being eaten at the slightest movement. Then I started to feel like a small animal with paws and caught the occasional weak glow of light, but still felt constantly afraid of being eaten and still searching inwardly for that something that could save me. I was moving little by little. I was all animals, fish, reptiles, birds, mammals, becoming more and more evolved. I was accompanied by the fear of being eaten and the feeling that there was that something that could save me from this terrible insecurity, fear, and suffering. I finally began to experience something clearer in my mind. There was a distant memory that I always used to talk to the extremely great one. There I would find my only salvation. I had no idea who he was. Then I had a human body, and even though I was less fearful, a strong sense of loneliness and insecurity remained in me. My attention was focused more and more upon remembering who had always helped me, and I still did not have the slightest what it was. By focusing on the meaning of that word, I slowly began to remember who he was and how much, in my previous life, I had gravitated towards him, and understood now how much security, help, and love he had always given to me in everything I had done. I became sure of everything and increasing need for him. I kept repeating mentally, "Father, Father, Father." I then started to experience that me Father is also the Father of all. I began to sense him as the Lord God our Father, and I repeated in my mind increasingly, "Lord God our Father." After a while I found myself at the time immediately before the start of this unimaginable and amazing journey. I felt the great presence, expansion of consciousness, awareness, deep peace, and I was hugged by that immense paternal love. Here I stop. It is very difficult for me to continue other than to tell you that my experience was extraordinary in those 6 days.